forgot to go up a little bit higher. Hmm. 50-50. Wow. Okay. Interesting. We only got 6 votes, so usually these polls take a lot more votes to bring out the numbers, but alright. What we doing? What are we doing? Hi. Well, I'm going to should pick up my daughter from a train station, leaving work, and I figure I put in a poll, ask my viewers here what they think about Tylenol and this autism controversy that was brought up by Donald Trump and RFK Jr. So I just want to gauge people's opinion. I guess I'm going to say an opinion at this point on, and the interesting is this is just something recent, right? So this is something that just came up not that long ago. We've studied autism for a long time, and we're pretty much, we understand a lot about autism. What we do understand is that there are certain things that may or may not contribute to autism, but we also done a lot of studies that have basically said that there is no link between use of Tylenol by pregnant women or in small children and autism. There is no link. But again, public perception changes, and public perception is often driven and dictated by public figures, whether they speak the truth or not. So I'm still seeing 50-50. So I'm going to assume that this vote is based on political ideology, that the 50-50 split is that, because I guarantee you that if I asked this question 6 months ago, the same question, it would not be 50-50. And in this case, I have more yeses than nos. So I think public opinion is often skewed by influential people, not necessarily experts. As we've seen, there's a lot of experts on YouTube and TikTok and everything else that literally say things that make no sense. They have no scientific base in what they say, and essentially they lie to people, and people start forming their own conspiracy theories, their own opinions on various things. So now I haven't heard any more about this Tylenol controversy since it was announced by Trump and RFK Jr. Was it like 3 months ago or something like that? I have not heard anything about that. So I haven't heard of any litigation. I haven't heard of anything. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm not looking at any sources that provide that information, but I have not seen anything. And thus far, all the scientific data that was provided suggests no link. So, and then somebody Harvard study. So it wasn't a Harvard study. It was an opinion of one person from Harvard. It was not a Harvard study. That was an opinion from one person from Harvard, who just happens to be a pro-Trump person. It has nothing to do with the medical study. So even the study that he tried to quote, he actually did not quote it correctly, because the study itself found no correlation between Tylenol and autism. So a lot of people don't understand how the research portion of this works. Is that you have to number one, set up an experiment, right, with certain key concepts that you're looking at, right, and then you have to find a specific population that you can test your hypothesis. You form a hypothesis, you test it on the population, and then once you get the results, then you have to go through results, and you have to carefully look at the data, because there may be some outliers that have nothing to do with the study, or maybe there's outliers that meaning, like, for example, let's say if they enrolled someone who already had autism in a study, then they probably not in this case, because this might be a little bit different, but if they enrolled someone who already was experiencing something prior to a treatment, then that would be an exclusionary criteria. So maybe they didn't know that person already had the exclusionary criteria at the time when they enrolled them, but so they would excuse those people from the study. But the study, then once the data is analyzed, then you check for errors, right? So then you give it to somebody else, you do peer review, you check for errors, see if it's a reproducible study, meaning that if I designed a study and I came up with a set of data and set a conclusion, then you give it to somebody else who can reproduce that. And once they reproduce that study, more than once, hopefully several times, then you can say, okay, that study, the findings from that study support my hypothesis, or the findings from that study, they denounce the hypothesis, meaning that we are not, there's no correlation in whatever we're testing. So far, no one has pointed to a study that would correlate any link between autism and Tylenol or acetaminophen. And it's not that hard to pronounce acetaminophen if you just try. So, and obviously there's been a lot of talk about autism, and people always search for causes. The most famous one is, you guys will probably remember or agree, that one of the most famous people who was fighting to find a cause of autism was the Playboy Playmate of the Year, Jenny McCarthy, who had one child that was born with autism, and she tried to find an excuse for why, that she didn't think it was anything to do with her genetics or with the father of the baby genetics. She was desperate to find an external validation, external source of autism, and she hooked up with a doctor who was doing such experiment, doing data analysis, and the doctor decided to fudge some numbers, right? So, because only after the data was provided to other scientists to reproduce that study, they could not reproduce the findings that he did. And so at that point, he had to retract, and he had to admit that he was lying about his test results. Or I don't want to say lying, but he was altering some numbers that made it look like a vaccine was responsible, or vaccines were responsible for autism, for increase of autism. So he actually ended up losing his degree and his accreditation, and the study was deemed unusable and removed from public circulation. But believe me, as someone who works in healthcare, I don't ever diss on people who are looking for information, because one of the things I do is I do teach nuclear medicine technology. So I have for a long time. So I have students, and there's a lot of challenging, difficult concepts in nuclear medicine, and so it takes time and patience, and you have to understand that. And so I don't necessarily jump at people for their beliefs. What I try to do is I try to provide resources where they can check for themselves. Some people can, some people have to be guided. You have to hold their hand, because they may have enough knowledge or enough ability to parse through data or parse through medical studies and find the conclusion for themselves. But I think the issue with what we're experiencing here, right, with this whole idea that 47% of people think that Tylenol causes autism, versus 53 right now on I don't know how many 30 some votes, I can't see from here. I think that is indicative of the society going away from education into finding quick facts on the internet, right? I value education. I think many people do value education, and education is being bastardized and demonized by certain groups of individuals, certain groups of influential individuals, because they don't like a certain part of education. You go to college, you take a humanities class, and they teach you about, how to be, a better person towards a specific, human population of certain groups, whatever, and you don't like that because it goes either against your values, your family beliefs, your religious beliefs, and so therefore you then look at education as a whole and say, well, that's dumb, And so the unfortunate result of this is that the population is getting quote unquote dumber when it comes to science, not smarter. Even though science discoveries have been incredible in the last decade, we've came up with some amazing things. I mean, the whole fusion technology that was being played with and successfully created a fusion reaction not too long ago. I mean, that is like splitting the atom, and we don't talk about that anymore. We've moved away from talking about things that affect us on daily basis to things that basically what the politicians and the influential people talk about. So I'm a champion for education. I make sure that my kids receive proper education through proper channels. I am always open to exploring ideas, right? Because that's the basis of learning, is to take something that you already know, apply something you don't know, and hopefully learn something from that, right? So that's how we learn about new things. Some things we discover by accidents, but other things we discover by perseverance. Was it Edison? It was Edison, right? That said that he did not. He learned 10,000 ways of how not to create a light bulb, and then finally, obviously an exaggeration, but he tried and he experimented, or his people tried and experimented with various sources, various ways to secure a wire, and finally, came up with a tungsten as a material that would withstand the heat, prolonged heat inside of a glass bulb, and create illumination for us. But it took a while. So a lot of people don't want to put in the time. A lot of people want to do a shortcut. They think they know something by reading 5 minutes on the internet. They think they understand how mRNA works, or they understand how vaccines work, or they even understand how Tylenol works, or what Tylenol is used for, because they go to the source that they're most comfortable with. The source that they're most comfortable with is a source that usually fits their beliefs, their political beliefs, their set of values, and the places they hang around with, the church, their community center, the bar, the tattoo parlor, whatever. Any places where they hang out. there are a certain set of beliefs that comes with each of these places, so people go there to get their information. There was a comedian not too long ago that said that we used to have this time in our society where if you didn't know something and you were invited to a lecture, or if you were invited to listen something on a topic that someone else spent 10 years researching, you would sit there and politely sit down, as quote unquote is what he said. You would sit down and shut the fuck up and listen and say, you know what, I don't know this shit, here I am to learn. And today, that's not true. Today you have people who basically get on social media, scream as loud as they can, because the loudest voice gets the most attention, and they proclaim something that may or may not be true. They find support in other people because other people, they're like, well, that seems reasonable. I don't know any better, so I'm gonna say, yeah, he's right. He's, or she's right. There's nothing that disproves that right now, and they go along with that. And it's just like a mob effect, but in terms of progressing this anti-intellectualism that's happening, and I don't care what political spectrum or educational spectrum you're on, or what you believe or you don't believe. Everyone can learn something. Everyone can learn something by shutting up and listening to someone else. Now, I don't want to preach to you guys. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoy my content, please subscribe. If you do not, welcome, and hopefully have a great day if you're leaving. But I firmly believe that we're lacking in the education here, and especially in the United States, education has been dumbed down for so many, and there's definitely an effort to dumb down the education and eliminate a lot of things from what I would consider as basic core educational values that we should all have. So, yeah. But yeah. That's what I think. And I think this whole thing about Tylenol, that's where it came out of. I bet you that have the people that said yes, they think Tylenol causes autism. They didn't think that 6 months ago. I guarantee you that they had it wasn't even on the radar, right? It wasn't even on the radar that somehow Tylenol causes autism, because Donald Trump didn't say it, because they listened to their favorite TV personality, who happens to be our president as well, and he proclaimed that loudly on news. He made that official. He made a guy who is a science denier, who is an anti-education guy, he made him the Secretary of Health. So the Secretary of Health, together with the president, are standing there and telling you, oh yeah, Tylenol causes cancer or causes autism. And you're like, well, I mean, if he's saying it, it must be true, because I believe in everything else he says. And I mean, using logic, I don't know. I mean, to me, it just seems like it's something that you would defer to an expert, or at least, at the very least, you would say, hey, we've had 10 scientific studies done. Based on these 10 scientific studies, we tested, X amount of people. Let's say we tested 10,000 people, and this is the results that we get from the group study. Which 10,000 people in the medical study, that's a lot, right? But we've definitely tested more than 10,000 people. All the studies that we've excluded Tylenol from causing autism, right? So just because one guy comes out there and says it's true, it doesn't make it true at all. And you fall into this trap of believing that man, every word he says. And to me, like from a scientific point of view, the day that I heard him say that windmill noise causes cancer, when he was ranting about what do you call it? He was ranting about the birds getting killed by windmills. I don't know why he has this crazy idea about the windmills. but he doesn't like wind energy. He doesn't like windmills, and he was raging about windmills. And at some point he says, now they tell me these things cause cancer, and they're going around going wee 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 wee. And it's like, when you hear that, and your primary occupation, your primary, your life is science, you're thinking to yourself, you're listening to a crazy person, because nothing like that happened. There's been absolutely nothing, and people who love him, they simply dismiss that. They say, well, okay, well, it's just some of the crazy things that he says. But if you keep adding up one crazy to another crazy to a third crazy to a fourth crazy, if you add up all the crazy things that he says, it makes him crazy. Like, it's the most unintelligible person there was. Like, he absolutely makes no sense. And so many things he says, he makes absolutely no sense. And I don't know if it's because the people who are listening to him don't have enough basic education behind them, or they're looking for an easy way out, but they believe him, and I can't. Regardless of what he says about everything else, when it comes to anything that's to do with science, anything that's to do with healthcare or medicine, I don't believe in a word that he says. One of the things that I was really excited, actually, because there are certain things that when he said, I was like, okay, that sounds great. When he was gonna ask Congress to work on legislation that would curb cost of in vitro fertilization, right? IVF. Now, on the surface, right, that seems like a straightforward thing, right? You're trying to get pregnant, you cannot, you've been deemed whatever by the medical community, and the only way for you to get pregnant is through IVF. And so the military has an IVF program, had an IVF program that was not renewed by the big, beautiful bill that was scrapped. And one of the culprits of that was Mike Johnson, because he is the pro-lifer that basically does not want people to create life in the test tube. Side note. But anyway, so one of the key things that he ran on was he's going to make IVF extremely affordable so that everyone who wants to have a baby can. Turns out, no such thing. There's nothing, right? He spent years talking about replacing the Affordable Care Act. Nothing. No replacement. No plan. Concept of a plan is as far as we've got. So, yeah, I don't believe him because of all these things that he has said and done, or hasn't said or hasn't done, or has promised and failed to even consider. And he gets mad every time you ask him about something. Like, what about this? You said you're gonna do this. Like, blah 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 blah. And he just like a little child, like a 2-year-old. He gets mad. So I cannot expect someone who behaves like a 2-year-old to sit down and grasp number one, grasp science, and number two, have enough ability to explain science to the public when he's making calls such as, oh, I think Tylenol, or acetaminophen. You can't even pronounce the word. Remember that? You can't even pronounce the word acetaminophen. And he thinks because he cannot pronounce the word that must be something bad, right? There's a whole set of people that are like, well, I can't pronounce this word on the ingredient chart, therefore it must be bad. It's like, okay, but just because you cannot pronounce it doesn't mean it's bad. It just means that you're bad at spelling or reading or education or something else, or maybe someone to, I don't know, teach you how to say the word. No shame in learning. I don't shame anybody for trying to learn, right? I would like everyone to learn, right? That's so many people sit there and they scroll the entire evening, on the phone, and they look at funny videos of people getting hurt or politicians calling each other out. And instead of that, you could have picked up you have a phone. You can download a couple apps. You can download an app like Hoopla, for example, where you can download a book and you can listen to a book. You don't have to actually read it. You can actually listen to a book. I can normally in the morning when I drive, I listen to a book on audio, and sometimes I do in the afternoon as well. And you can doing that, if you drive to work back and forth, if you drive 20 minutes every day, you could read 20 books or listen to 20 books, 30 books per year easily, and learn something new, or entertain your brain away from all the nonsense that you see on TV or you see on your on your reel when you scroll all afternoon, all evening, and late into the 1 o'clock hours. But yeah, but still, let's see. Well, let's see. We have a little shift here. We have 41% of people think that Tylenol causes autism, and 59% no out of 54 votes. Now, unfortunately, I cannot read most of your comments, but it's harmful. Let's see. Yes, let's see. Somebody says, okay, Jeremy, yes, because it is harmful to a neonatal development. According to whom? So, like, if you're gonna say something is harmful to, let's say, neonatal development, okay, then please provide at what stage of the neonatal development, right? Is it the first trimester, second trimester? After that, it's not necessarily, you're develop most of the things. Most of the connections are already connected. There's a couple of things that need to develop still, but at 28 weeks, when a baby born, there's some chance that the baby's going to survive in an incubator. They do, the preemies. But Tylenol, you would have to have a profound effect on the body. You would have to take doses that will definitely affect that. But does Tylenol cross the blood, the barrier into the placental barrier into the baby, right? How much of it, if it does, crosses into the baby? Is it enough for it to disrupt any protein synthesis? Is it enough to disrupt DNA replication, mRNA translation? That's where, at what point does it stop the fetal development, or does it affect the fetal development? You can't just say, well, it affects the fetal development. That doesn't mean anything. In the world of maybe in a day, everyday 9 to 5 Joe Schmo world, maybe that means something. But in the world of science and a world of where we're talking about real things, it means nothing. It really means nothing. You have to provide something that someone has tested and observed. Because you're just saying that doesn't mean anything. It was like during COVID, right? During COVID, there was a lot of people who were trying to find alternative ways of treating themselves, and well, some of them, they got over COVID because their natural immunity fought off, right, the infection. They were strong enough, they were healthy enough. And some, despite of taking all these alternative medicines, that they thought that it would work better than, let's say, either preventive vaccine, or it was they had one or two medications that were designed specifically to treat COVID. This is a weird name, I don't remember it right now. And they took everything but that, right? So they took every single thing but that. There's also some, support and supportive therapy, right? So you need to make sure you hydrate the person via IV. Make sure you continue to monitor all their vital signs. Make sure, you treat their temperature if it goes up. If their breathing starts to decline, then you might have to put them on the ventilator. And a lot of people came out. But a lot of people died. A lot of people, right when the vaccine came out, right? As soon as the vaccine came out, it was first geared towards senior citizens because they were at the highest risk of catching COVID and dying, because generally they had more comorbidities, meaning that they had other conditions that, together with COVID, would present deadly. And so the vaccine was rolled out to those individuals, then healthcare workers. I took my first vaccine, I think within a week when it was available here in Florida. I think maybe 3 days. So I took my vaccine, and sure enough, I ended up being one of those people who was allergic to the very first of the Pfizer vaccine. My temperature spiked. My throat started closing off, my blood pressure spiked, and I was having a visible allergic reaction to the vaccine, and I had to be treated. And then I said to myself, well, I can either skip the next one or pre-medicate myself to make sure that my body doesn't react again. And so I chose the pre-medication, which, yeah, you're gonna maybe say, well, that was stupid, but we pre-medicate patients all the time for various type of procedures when they have an allergy to contrast in CAT scan or something else, when the only way to find an answer is that you have to actually perform the procedure where you might be allergic to a certain component of the procedure. You do pre-medicate, you do hydrate them afterwards, you try to flush their kidneys to make sure that the medication is out. So it's nothing new. So I've essentially followed a protocol for pre-medicating myself for the possible second vaccination is supposed to come 30 days later. And then I went to the vaccination, site, and they denied me. They said because of your previous allergic reaction, we cannot give you the vaccine. I said, okay, well, that's fair. All right, so then I waited 6 months when the Moderna vaccine became available, and I took the series of the Moderna vaccines, and I was not allergic to either one of those. So I ended up taking 3 vaccines in total. And I haven't taken any boosters because I'm not in any of the categories of people. I am a healthcare worker. I come in contact with COVID patients all the time. I still do to this day occasionally when we get them. And I do perform a lot of testing on their lungs as well with an aerosolized procedure. So I have to make sure that I am protected because I don't want to bring that stuff home. Nobody does. But that was as soon as the vaccine came out, I know I'm kind of whining it over here, but as soon as the vaccine came out, there's 2 distinct group of people: those who decided to take the vaccine because they're like so valiant, and those who saw the vaccine as some sort of experimental eugenics design that's going to kill people, right? And there was a third vaccine from Johnson & Johnson that was affecting some hearts in a very small number of people, and then it was pulled because it was they saw after about 20 or 30 cases, they said that vaccine is actually not good. So that was a good call on them. So I would say that was an exclusion to that. But both Pfizer and Moderna vaccines did not have any major side effects other than what you normally expect from injections. And in my case, I happened to be one of those lucky individuals that was actually allergic to one of the ingredients in the maybe 2 ingredients in the Pfizer vaccine, so I couldn't take that. But I've learned from that, and they've learned from that, right? The scientific community has learned, and right now, you still see quite a few people complaining that vaccines kill people. You hear people say that they know somebody who died from a vaccine, which I'm not sure how you can even prove that you can die from a vaccine unless you have a major anaphylaxis and that kills you. And vaccines, whatever they do to the body, then 6 weeks later the vaccine is completely gone from your body. The only thing that's left over is memory cells, immune memory cells. Same thing with people would continuously say, well, the vaccine is going to change my DNA. It is not, because the vaccine is not DNA, it's RNA. DNA makes RNA. It doesn't go backwards. It doesn't work like that. So you cannot have something. It's like, I don't even have an analogy for it, but like you're thinking of a process that doesn't exist. You're thinking that for some reason mRNA gets turned into DNA, which doesn't. mRNA is made into proteins, and proteins are your skin, your hair, your heart, your muscles, everything that's made out of protein. Protein is the basic, structure of the human body, and so these are made from mRNA. They're turned into proteins, right? The genetic code, the mRNA code, is turned into protein, and that's how you build tissues. So people who sit there and they're like, well, it's going to cause me to have it's going to redo my DNA. It's not, because it's not at the point where it can turn back into DNA. It doesn't. That's just not what happens. And in any case, the mRNA the mRNA vaccine is made of the same nucleotides or the same basic components as DNA. There's absolutely no difference in what they're made of. There is, adenine, guanine, cytosine, thiamine, or in case of uracil, in case of RNA. So, yeah, you're not putting anything in your body that's not new. You're just telling the body to create a protein that your body will recognize as one of the parts of COVID virus, and it will tell your body that this is what we need to fight, right? Because this is what's going to kill us. So that's how basic vaccines work all the time. And before Trump took over, we had quite a good research, because mRNA delivery is actually extremely useful, and it's extremely good, and it's diligent, and it's safe. And unfortunately, with Trump at the helm of this country, we're going back to treating people with coal and chamomile tea. So anyway, but if you enjoy my rant, I'll have maybe another one tomorrow. I try to do one at 3:45 every day before I get to a train station, and I am at the train station, so I'm going to say thank you for tuning in to Tom, the nuclear guy, and I will, final vote tally here, 57 votes, and 39% says no, autism is not caused by Tylenol, and 61% here says, 39% says yes, autism is caused by a Tylenol, and then 61% no. So I'm a little disappointed. It should be more of like 80-90% says no, hopefully 100, but at this point, the majority of people don't think that autism is caused by Tylenol, which is good, which is what science says, not what I say. It's what science says. So, in any case, you guys have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you for tuning in. I'm sorry I cannot read all the comments or respond. Maybe I saw one or two comments because I'm driving, so I'm trying to be responsible. But on the drive home, sometimes people listen to others. I listen to other YouTubers sometimes, to other videos, and I like to learn something. So hopefully someone has learned one or two things from me, and if you did, subscribe. If you haven't, I wish you well. And if you want to check out something else, I'm gonna have another poll tomorrow, another health related one, I think, and then we can talk about it, or I can talk about it. You guys can put in your comments. So have a wonderful day. Talk to you tomorrow, maybe.